Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
This is Stress-Free Living. I'm Ray Samich. I'd like to introduce all of you to my dear friend, radio colleague, my spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Very well, thank you. You know, I refer to you now openly on this program as my spiritual brother. For many, many years, I didn't want to really reveal how close you and I are and how much I value the relationship that we have. I didn't know if that would interfere with the perception of our audience to know that this wasn't just a radio interview, but this was really a conversation between two people who have a great deal of respect and love for each other. So I'm openly saying that now. I figured, you know, as I get older, it doesn't matter what people think. I just want I just want to tell them what I really believe to be true. So I don't know if you've noticed, I've changed that introduction for you over the years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, well,
feelings are mutual. Without doing this show, although both of us speak, my mother used to say, nature has given you one mouth to speak, but 2 ears to listen. So listen to even yourself when you are talking, because what happens is we are all, when we disappear, when we are not present, in other words, when our ego is not present, some wisdom come out of us, and we should listen to that wisdom, because that is not ours. That comes from universal force, universal divine force.
Well, if we both practice what we talk about on this program, and I hope that we are able to do that much of the time, if not all the time, we have to believe that there's something far greater than us that is producing the very best of us. And so if we can tap into that, all of us, not just you and me on this program, but all of us as we live our lives, then obviously we can produce far greater results for ourselves and for our world. And so that's what we try to do this week. We try, and every week, we try to tap into that deeper thought, that deeper belief that comes from outside of us, through us. And if you would like to join us on a regular basis, we encourage that. We hope that you can. We know many, many people that have talked to me over the years, over the decades, find this show to be very interesting and enjoyable and hopefully meaningful as well. I want to let you know, too, that we have a lot of these shows out there on our YouTube channel, Stress-Free Living Radio. It's a YouTube channel that simply is filled with programs that we have done in the past, and they are all titled so you can get a feel for, and a little description for them, so you can get a feel for what they're about. And maybe there's certain times you want to reflect on an idea or even want to share an idea with somebody that may be going through a stressful moment for whatever reason. So please think about that and share that link. Also, one last quick announcement is that we do have the opportunity for Zoom live audiences to share this program with us, which allows you to talk before the show, during the commercial breaks, and afterwards. We always have a little conversation afterwards as well. And we certainly thrive on the input that our Zoom guests give us during the breaks. Many times it's their questions that you hear me asking of Ratanjit when we come back from our break. So please feel free to join us on that. If you go to the YouTube channel, you will see that Zoom link there that you can tie in and be a part of the show at a deeper inside level. Ratanjit, today we're going to probably talk about the most foundational aspect of this program. From the very first time when we started these conversations, you really accentuated the importance of adding the highest value. And we've done a number of shows on that. In particular, we've often referenced that idea, that concept, in hundreds of shows. But as I look around in this world today, as we live in this post-pandemic world, we live in a world that unfortunately seems to be thriving on corruption, thriving on self-centeredness, whether it's corporations that are just out for the buck and not caring about individuals, not caring about the environment, just making the decisions for their own profits, whether it's the government. I mean, we just constantly have aggravation from the government, not only in this country, but around the world, that do not seem at all focused on the good of the people that they are supposedly serving, but they all have their internal agendas. And even on an individual basis, there just seems to be more greed, more envy, more violence, less caring about each other. And I don't mean to paint such a bleak picture, but it just seems that there's fewer people that are trying to add value today than I have witnessed in my lifetime. There's more people that have bought into the concept of me, and getting as much as I can out of life. So that's the question today that I really wanted to pose to you. Everybody knows adding the highest value is the most divine concept, the best way in a perfect world to be the best for everybody and give the best results for everybody. But how do you possibly do it today? How do you be that Lone Ranger that seeks to do it without getting crushed and trampled on and destroyed in the process? Is it realistic today to have a life that adds the highest value?
This is a fundamentally very good question. So the fact is that, if we look at our human body, so, we have all kinds of organs in our body, your heart, your brain, your lungs, your kidneys, and so on and so forth. So there in our medical profession, there are specialists who cure these things. So interestingly, if your whole body is not totally addressed, so if you cure, say, kidney, and the drug affects your heart, and that is not a true cure. So
Right.
we are treating this human body as an assembly of organs. We are not treating this human body as one. So similarly, in our society, we are treating everybody as individual, separate from us. We are not treating them as one, because we are focusing on the human body, and human body is separate, and you have separate brains, separate intelligence, separate skills, separate talents, and separate knowledge, and all those things. So we consider each one as separate, and each one is given a separate social security and name and everything. We are all calling them individuals, but we do not realize, we are not aware of oneness, the power which enlivens this human body is one. And without that power, this human body is basically dead meat. You cannot keep it for too long. So we are not aware of that one force which enliven us, and we do not live in the knowledge. All our design, all our decisions, all our laws, all our basically politics and everything is all designed in absence of that knowledge. So as a consequence, that whatever happiness, success, and sanity which we are going after is all temporary, because we do not understand the basic design of our own self. We do not comprehend who we are. As a consequence of that, all our awareness, all our truth are incomplete and erroneous. And if your truth understanding of reality is erroneous, doesn't matter how intelligent you are, doesn't matter how much technically you are advanced. So when you apply those facts to erroneous understanding of the truth, the results are going to be erroneous. So that is fundamentally wrong with this human race and human mind. So even in our study, even when our child is born, we tell him that you are this, your name is this. You have to individually, you have to excel, you have to achieve success at the cost of everyone else. You never teach a child the truth that you are one. Your power which enlives you is one. So that part, until is understood and comprehended and lived by, we are not in a position to understand the concept of adding the highest value in every thought and every action. And the consequence of adding the highest value are not available to us. Ray?
So everything you have said justifies, invalidates, fully explains how it should be, why it should be that way. And if our world did enjoy people who understood that and who acted accordingly, how everything would be different. Okay, so you once again have laid out the perfect plan, which is very doable, it's very viable. It certainly could happen, but to go back to my question, it isn't happening. All right, people aren't being taught oneness. They're being taught so many things in schools that are all about how to make money and how to ultimately refine your skills so that you can get a good job. And I'm not saying those things aren't meaningful, how to add and subtract and write and speak and everything, all of that has value, but they're not getting this core fundamental understanding. It's out there around the world. There's some books being written and there's podcasts on it, et cetera, but not at a level that it's really reaching the masses the way it needs to. So getting back to my question, you've just accentuated the divide. You've just again said, yes, this is the way it should be. This is why it should be that way. And my point is, but it's not. And how can I make a difference if I do it? If our audience of this program does it, is that enough to create a ripple effect that actually can affect the world? Or are we just kind of dreaming? Are we just kind of doing our best, but knowing that it really isn't going to move the meter.
It's worth repeating a quote from what I call as my idol, Albert Einstein, who was one of the greatest scientists. In his senior years, he writes this quote. He says, "A person experiences life as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness." And then he says further, "Our task must be to free ourselves from this self-imposed prison, and through compassion, to find the reality of oneness." So it's not what I'm saying, the oneness. It doesn't matter whether you come from spiritual side when you go from understanding what this divine force is, which is enlivening us, or you go through scientific end, the end conclusion is same. Our task must be to free ourselves from the self-imposed prison, and through compassion, to find the reality of oneness. So once we comprehend that and begin to live that oneness, first thing happens is our stress goes away. Our fear of death goes away, because death only happens at the body levels. The power which enlivens this human body is there before we enter this human body and after we leave this human body. Although our world is what we touch, what we feel, what we see, what we taste, we constructed our world around us because of the five senses. The truth lies in actually beyond five senses. So once you begin to understand this concept of oneness and begin to see this oneness, and the best way is to cultivate the habit of oneness, because ultimately we do not live our knowledge. We talk about it, we write books about it, we lecture our knowledge, but we do not live. What we live are our habits. So until you form this habit of living in oneness, you cannot position yourself of adding value. So let me give you, before, go ahead, you have a comment.
We're still not getting to what I'm trying to say, Ratanjit, and what I'm trying to ask you.
Okay.
So let me give an example. And actually, one of our regular Zoom guests, and she's on the line here today, has talked about how she grew up or knows people, maybe she didn't herself, but she knows people who grew up in a very difficult environment, very difficult neighborhood. And I know of other people that have done this too, that their survival is difficult. Even as a child, they grow up in an environment where there's violence, there's poverty, there's a lack of hope. There's not the type of family structure that most of us enjoy as children. And the last thing that they're thinking of is adding the highest value. They're just thinking about living and surviving day to day, having enough food, avoiding getting hurt, avoiding getting killed. They don't have anything inside of them that says, I want to be like I want to help everybody, and I want to add value to the world, and I want to make a difference in the world. They're concerned that they're even going to survive the night. That's an extreme, obviously, that thank God most of our people don't have to live in that environment. But you do have that. And then you have an awful lot of people that are somewhere in the middle. They're still not getting the message. They're still not understanding the purpose of life. They're not understanding oneness. Nobody's even shared that concept with them. Nobody's even shared the concept of adding the highest value. They're growing up in an environment where, you know, a parent or two parents are surviving. They're working. They're spending all the money. Occasionally they get a little bit of something as a perk, but most of the time they're just getting by. Again, the mindset isn't anything at all about oneness, and it's not anything about adding value to the world. It's just about getting by. Okay. And it seems that that's a bigger and bigger portion of the world that are in those scenarios. So I'm going to give you a minute with the break to think about this. But when we come back, I want to ask, with those realities, with the fact that those people are there, despite everything you've been saying for the first part of the program of why it should be better and why we need to accept oneness, if it's not there in these environments, in these households, if these kids aren't being exposed to it at a young age, and they don't know it when they get older to teach their kids, how do we change this paradigm? How do we allow people to understand the value of what you've said? We're going to take a break, and then I'm going to come back and give you a chance to hopefully answer that question. This is Stress-Free Living. We'll be right back. Okay. And feel free, anybody, if you've got a quick comment, we've got about 90 seconds.
Good morning, everyone. What came up for me as you were speaking, Ray, is heartbreaking and heart crushing. The heartbreaking experience was my experience living in terrible neighborhoods in such dire circumstances. And the heart crushing was what I felt when I thought of it as my responsibility to fix it all for everyone around me.
Yeah. You know, you were in my mind when I was talking about that, Kim. You've expressed that, and it's touched me very much. Anybody else want to say something quickly or ask a question that I can relay to Ratanjit?
Only thing that I can tell is whenever there is change, I have developed in mind where I say that change is inevitable. And I have to accept the change and have tried to develop adaptability sense. I have to adapt it. There's no way out. So it's just coming back to the same thing. We need to change ourselves to adapt. And two essential things go with it is lifelong learning and critical thinking. And that's what Ratanjit is pointing out. It's the critical thinking of realizing that we have to change accordingly. We have to accept oneness and be self-aware how we react to the change and not do basically just the reaction to the change, but to learn how to adapt. And I think that's where critical thinking of oneness will help. I'll let it go to Ratanjit and let him finish my thoughts.
We are back on Stress-Free Living, enjoying great conversations with our Zoom guests and inviting you to be a part of that in the future. I'm Ray Samich, and again with Ratanjit Sunday, talking about a very deep topic today, and it seems simplistic. Add the highest value. Okay, it's something that we have heard all through our lives. Add value, but when you really think about doing it, when you really think about the obstacles of doing that in today's world, where not a lot of that is going on. So my question, Ratanjit, I had asked before the break, and gave you some heartbreaking examples, heart-wrenching examples of people that don't add the highest value because they don't even have the ability to ponder doing it. They are just surviving.
You know, what happens is when you go to a doctor, you have some chest pain, and suddenly the doctor does the test and says, look, your arteries are completely blocked. You are going to have a heart attack, or we have to do a open heart surgery. So suddenly, when you talk to that person about right habits and good food and proper exercise, that person is basically says, well, wait a minute, I can't do that because I have the heart condition. But what resulted into heart condition is the lack of proper food and lack of proper exercise and all those things. So people who are suffering these situations, they are having a heart issue, and they basically want these, suddenly the heart become all right, so that they can do exercise, they can eat right food and so on. But it is the consequences of living a life without awareness of oneness which causes all these problems. And, we are interconnected. The whole society is one. So if you are eating the wrong food, so heart has not done anything wrong. Why heart is suffering from the ill decision your mouth has made, your taste has made, your habits have made, because we are one. This human body is one. All the organs, all these are paying the consequence of your choice of inductive five senses. So similarly, our society is paying the consequences of somebody not practicing oneness. So it is to start with, we have to change our education system. We have to change our priorities. We have to inculcate the truth in our essential teaching and understanding of this human life. And oneness is the first thing which a child, when he is even aware of something, is given to understand what is oneness. So slowly, we have to inculcate this habit of living in oneness for the entire society. So automatically, people are not going to focus on just becoming rich or becoming famous, or they are suddenly going to see their richness, their happiness is tied to somebody else's happiness, somebody else's well-being. So you begin to think of adding value, not only think of adding value, you become an entity which is value-adding entity. In every thought, automatically this empowers you to add value. Every action will empower you to add value, right?
Right. So what you have done here for all of your conversation today is lay out absolute, fundamentally solid reasons why this is required, why adding the highest value with the knowledge of oneness is the only absolute way to live life. You haven't honestly answered my question, but maybe you have indirectly, because maybe by being so staunch in your comments today, in terms of saying it is the only way. Maybe you've answered the question finally, and it's getting through my thick skull that says, it doesn't matter if the world isn't doing it. It doesn't matter if none of my friends are doing it. It doesn't matter if I think that I am the Lone Ranger. It is so absolutely essential to the future of the world and even my best life that I live it. So I think I'm hearing the answer in a rather odd way, that you're simply saying there is no other choice. There is no other concern. You just do it, Ray. Just do it, because it has to be this way. Anything else short of this is going to lead to more bad things, more frustration, more corruption, more stress, more of everything that is on the bad side of the spectrum. And if we start doing this and more people start doing this, it'll lead to more good things on the other side of the spectrum. So you haven't really answered me respectfully, but I think you have, because you have been so strong today on your feelings about how essential it is and how it's the only way to go, that I guess it doesn't matter if I'm the only one doing it, right? Or if the people listening to the show are doing it. It doesn't matter if we've got to start somewhere, and we've got to start making a difference.
So the thing is this, Ray, if somebody bought this concept of adding highest value, by the way, it even in the worldly sense, when you don't understand oneness, your success depends on adding the highest value. The corporation, two entities, the survival happens only to one company who adds consistently higher value, right? Other one eventually goes down the path of not sustaining itself. So fundamentally, I want to point out the difference between adding the highest value and becoming the highest value adding entity. Once you comprehend oneness, only then you become the highest value adding entity. Otherwise, we will add value selectively. Oh, he's my friend, so I add value. He's my family, I have to add value. So, oh, he's nobody, he's stranger, I don't have to add value. So you selectively add value. Most of us have good intentions and they do good things. They contribute to good causes. There are amazing stats. This country is the most charitable country on earth. So the charitable giving in America comes close to $400 billion per year. And 70% of that is given by not corporation, but by individuals. So, but there is another thing which we practice, which is called moral licensing. Moral licensing, which means when you are, the greatest example of that is when you are on a diet. So you have 6 days of controlling yourself. Now comes 7 days. So you say, oh, I've been good all 6 days. So today I'm going to have a piece of cake. I'm going to indulge myself. Now, the amazing example of this moral licensing is, you remember Enron, which the corporation which basically based on fraud. So the CEOs of that company, Ken Lay and Jeffrey, these people did very charitable. Say they gave most money than any other organization to charitable causes. And there are over 7 billion hours of free charitable volunteering goes on in this country. So, these people, we all do this charity out of guilt, not because we have become one. So you are going to practice adding the highest value because of guilt. A lot of people do it because of gaining recognition, gaining, I want to be a good person. So you never become you. Your basic yourself, once you become oneness, it automatically, your mind, your everything becomes value-adding entity. You don't have to do anything. All your thinking, all your doing ultimately adds value. So in this absence of oneness, many times you think you are adding value, you end up subtracting value. Right?
The concept of moral licensing is, boy, I'd say that's a real tough one. That's one that really hits you right here, because I think regrettably we all do a lot of that without even thinking of it. It's just the way that it makes us feel better about our lives from day to day. And you can mention it, whether it's a diet, something as simplistic as that. Okay, I've been drinking Diet Coke all week, and I really don't like Diet Coke, but I've been drinking it all week. But today I'm going to celebrate, and I'm going to have a triple chocolate sundae because it offsets the fact that I've had Diet Coke all week. Or whether it's, I'm going to give more money to my church in collection because I know that I really haven't been as fair with people as I should have been this week. So I'm going to make up for it by giving a bigger donation to my church. Whatever the scenario is, and there could be hundreds of thousands of examples of it, I think we all do a more and more licensing than we probably should. All right. So that's a tough one. That's one that could merely keep me from sleeping at night if I think about how many times I've exercised moral licensing in my life. To think that being a highest value adding entity eliminates moral licensing is a really beautiful, perfect thought. If I could elevate myself to the point where I don't pick and choose, and I don't justify what I'm doing because of what I just did, and know what I have to do tomorrow because of what I did yesterday, that really is taking this to truly the highest level that I can attain as a human being. So I appreciate you adding that element to this. You've just taken, though, this race that I had finally gotten to a point of understanding why we need to add the highest value no matter what. And now you've taken me to do it at the extreme level, which I want to get there. But I first wanted to kind of start with just the idea that says, even though it's really difficult and challenging, I have to do it. Okay, I'm trying to take baby steps today, Ratanjit. I'm trying to get to first base, and then hopefully I can eventually score a run. at this first level, okay, of understanding that the world isn't perfect and that I might just be the only person that does this, is it enough for me to be the one to do it because it's so important because I can sleep well at night? Is that enough of a justification that says I did my best in adding the highest value, maybe even becoming a value adding entity? Should that be enough to motivate me to get up the next day and do it again? Or is it my human nature that says, but I got to see some results. I've got to see that I'm making a difference. I've got to win some people over. Do I need to see a justification, or is my own action enough of a justification for it?
It's a little complicated. I have to take a one step back.
Okay.
So this nature, although a child is given birth by a mother, but mother doesn't design a child. It somehow formulates itself within the womb of the mother without her knowing what kind of, she doesn't even control the gender of the baby. She doesn't control the shape or the, how handsome or how beautiful the baby is. So there is a common thread, everything which is going on within everything, because everything is designed by the universal power. There is a common thread of the thought process, the psychology of the universe, which goes through every living being. To understand the psychology of the divine forces of the universe, let's look at a life, a life which doesn't have the manipulation of the brain. So,
Ratanjit, I apologize, but I think this is actually a good place because you can come right back with that story. We do need to take a break. We just went right past it, and when we come back, then we can tell that story, okay, of understanding the psychology of the universe. This is Stress-Free Living. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm sorry to have cut you off, but if I didn't do it then, we'd have 2 minutes when you come back. All right, everybody, we've I think we're getting somewhere. Anybody have a quick thought?
So we quoted, confuse everybody.
It could be. Oh, Darby's going to be brave here. She opened up her mic. Darby, got something?
Yeah, I'm not really confused, but just anxious to hear about this universal power, because I know that is the source. My question is, where does the source come from?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay. Looks like everybody's just deep in thought here today, Ratanjit.
So Ray,
Like
the
you
only
are. Okay,
the only
go ahead, Doctor.
really quickly, the only other thing is, with all that being said, that's we can only control our own behavior. We can't control what everybody else does. And if we're true to ourselves and true to the universe, then we do our best at every occasion that we have. And hopefully the world follows. And if it does, it does. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But you can only control your behavior. So I guess to live in the best way.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We are back on Stress-Free Living. Ray Samich with you and Ratanjit Sandhi discussing a very interesting topic here today about the practicality in today's world of adding the highest value. Ratanjit, you were about, and I interrupted you, and I apologize for that, but you were about to describe how the psychology of the universe needs to be understood by all of us before we can kind of understand how we should live. So please share that story.
Yeah, this intelligence, psychology of the universe, which has designed all of us and the universe. So to understand this, we have to look at a live thing without brain, because brain has its ego and its understanding it contaminates this whole psychology. So let's take a rose bush and plant a rose bush in our backyard. So this rose bush is basically controlled naturally by the psychology of the universe. So when you water it, the sunlight, and you nurture it, and eventually there is one day when it blooms, beautiful rose appears. Now that basically is the success of this plant. This is naturally designed to only produce a rose. Now this rose has beauty and has fragrance, and when we pass it by, we appreciate the beauty and we appreciate the smell. Now, this rose, is the rose bush, does not increase or decrease its fragrance or beauty when a saint passes by, or a criminal passes by, or a clean person passes by, or a dirty person passes by. So it is beauty, it is fragrance. So similarly, apple tree, we have never seen an apple tree eats its own apple. So nature is designed to produce success. Now, a human being is given this very creative energy, creative power in the form of a brain. So each individual is designed very uniquely to add the value which others cannot add as accurately, as uniquely as they can. So instead of using this brain to produce or unique and highest successes, which is eventually going to add the highest value to this around the surrounding, to our universe, and this brain, when it is not contaminated, when it has the fundamental understanding of who we are through oneness, it basically gives a filter to keep the ego out and the animosity out and the anything negative out. So this human brain only possesses its creative, positive powers at that instance. And it has become value-adding entity. So what happens is, in absence of this filter of oneness, our brain gets contaminated by ego, selfish agendas, and fear, and greed, and insecurity, and all these things happen to us because we don't have the filter. So if you don't have the proper filter to keep these things out, you are going to be adding value conditionally, and you will not be able to add the highest value, and you will not become the highest value entity.
You know what's so ironic about that, Ratanjit, is that you have all of those living beings, and you could even take animals in there, with a small brain. And you can even see there that they are designed to work together, to help each other, to nurture each other. It's so ironic that when you come to the human, which is supposed to be the highest level of society, the highest level of evolution, and it's our brain that kind of defies the natural intent. We kind of defy the psychology of nature that is exercised freely at every other level because of that addition of greed and ego. And it's crazy because that's what should be working for us, right? I mean, our brains should be telling us more ways of how to live better and create a better world, which is by adding the highest value. And instead, you use the word filter, it's filtered indirectly to say, no, don't worry about everybody else. Just do what's best for me. And there's a terrible irony there. I mean, do you think it was always that way? Do you think that element has gotten worse as technology has come into place and as we've become more focused on money and less focused on the land and those types of things? Do you think we're kind of evolving negatively there with the advancement of our brains?
You see, a human being basically remains at the animal level, except higher creativity. It has become more dangerous because of his creativity, and you can see the consequences around us. It only becomes a true human when its intelligence and its understanding is all guided by the truth of oneness. So the difference between an animal and a human is basically the oneness paradigm. So once you comprehend oneness, so we do not convert our children or human race into human beings, true human beings. We convert them into highly dangerous animals. And as a consequence of that, we see the society, which is fighting ourselves, which is cheating ourselves, which is compromising ourselves. And once a while, we see a reflection of that intelligence through us, and we do some good tasks, but we don't do consistently good tasks. We do not become goodness itself. We only do this good task to enhance our resume or increase our wealth or increase our fame or temporarily give us ego boost. And this goes on, and we have to realize that in order for us to fully realize ourselves to a human being, we have to understand the concept and live the concept of oneness, the truth of oneness. So until that happens, we will remain glorified animals, Ray.
Wow. It's we all need a motivator. We all need something to drive us forward for whatever goals we have. And for some, and I know some of our Zoom callers have said, hey, it's enough for me just to know that I'm doing the right thing. I can't control anybody else. I'm okay with how I live my life. And if that's a motivator for some people, that's great. I think most of us need to see something else. We need to see that we are accomplishing something and reaching others. You've laid out a lot of information for us today, Ratanjit, that has been so powerful to me, to touch me, even though we've talked about this many times before. You've opened up some new branches of the tree that we want to go down. Definitely want to continue this topic next week. and more thoroughly discuss how we can do this in society, specifically how we can become that value-adding entity. Thank you for really opening so many doors here today for us to think about this important topic going forward. Thank you, Ratanjit. And thank you for everybody being there with us today as part of our conversation, whether you're a Zoom guest or otherwise, radio, internet, however it might be. Thank you for being with us. Remember, we're all playing the same game. We'll talk to you again real soon.
We haven't heard
Okay,
from
we
Dr.
are off. We
We
are
haven't-
off the air
haven't heard
and
from Dr.
inviting all of you to join us.
We haven't heard from Dr. Singh.
No, we haven't today.
Hello. Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm sorry I got late because this is a Vaisakhi day and I was busy earlier in the other activity. So
Happy-
even next week it will be the same. I know that.
Yeah.
So I joined late, but I will be definitely hearing this on your YouTube and then come back on it, because this is a very interesting topic and we all should work on it, on how to really improve upon ourselves. Since I have not heard the complete conversation, so I might not be able to comment much on it.
You can catch this whole program on YouTube.
Yeah, I will be catching up because today and next week we are having the great that Nagar Kirtans.
Oh, okay.
So in Vancouver, and because of my association with the other society, we have to do it early in the morning. At 5 o'clock, I had to go there.
So we are living our habits.
Yeah.
Rituals
Yeah, but definitely we are living our habits.
and rituals, and suddenly
Yeah,
not
we
realizing.
never live our knowledge.
Yeah.
That is very, very, very much true. And I have got examples and examples of it. People are doing it. Even yesterday we had a lot of conversation on that.
Ray, can I ask a quick question here? Steve Marsh speaking.
Sure.
So I think what really struck me was your analogy, your metaphor of the rose bush that continues, or the apple tree that continues to produce regardless of what walks by, whatever. This is its job. It doesn't ask for anything in return. It just produces that. And I think that's sort of saying that we all need to do what we can do and not let the environment as much as you can affect us. Right.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was brilliant and a really wonderful metaphor. So here's a little different question. So if that's what we should do and want to do, sometimes our personal situation or our thing with our family may be in conflict with that. Someone you love wants you to do something that isn't that, and you may not be able to do it. So what takes precedence in those situations? Does doing, or are we not? So that's where I have conflicts. I want to do something or something else that seems to be in my world the right thing to do, consistent, and yet it doesn't fit well with someone else in my family or my nearest environment. How do I navigate that? That
gives you a brilliant opportunity to relate this topic to your family member. Although it is going to be difficult, but that gives you an opportunity to why you want to do the right things, although the database of the family member is different, but they will be able to see your perspective sooner or later.
I appreciate that.
I think this might be a good time to put something in here that seems disconnected, but it really is very much connected. Ratanjit many years ago made a statement to me that I had never thought about. Family to me is so critically important. I am so blessed with our children and our grandchildren, and we get together on a regular basis. And my siblings that I still have with me. I mean, family to me is so important. And yet Ratanjit pointed out to me that when you choose your spouse who helps you create the family, you are not choosing somebody who is family. You're choosing, as a matter of fact, somebody who's not allowed to have any of the same bloodline that you have. So in order to create something that is so important to you that we call a family, we have to go outside of the family to get that started. And I had never thought about that point. I had never realized that the most important person in my family wasn't family. Okay. And that was essential to starting the entire thing. So when there is a crisis within the family, I always think about that again. I always think that, okay, we create this value of family and it is there, no question, but it shows the importance of everybody else who isn't family. And it shows that, in matter of fact, if we didn't have those people outside of our family, we wouldn't have a family at all. So, you know, when I have those crises too, Dr. Morris, as you just talked about, what do I do? Because this is family. Well, it reminds me that we all are one. You know, we all, even outside of that bloodline that's so important to us, we do need to consider the greater good. And sometimes it isn't, quote, the family.
A true spouse becomes a lifelong partner only when you love him or her unconditionally. Right? So
Yeah.
what we call as family, we don't love them unconditionally. We just call them family. We judge them and tolerate them. And basically, he's my brother. How can I say this? How can I do this? You don't love them unconditionally. You love them because of their common bloodline. And if you were later on in your life came to know that you have a twin brothers who got separated from you in the hospital, and now you are meeting after when you are 50 or 60 or something like that. So because of that knowledge, your brain is going to induce artificial love to love him because of the bloodline. You do not have the true love. The true love happens when we realize we are one. So whether you meet a stranger, you have the same amount of love and affection as you will meet the person who is supposed to be blood relative or family. So your family is everyone who comes across to you, who is in front of you, and you serve them unconditionally because your joy, your satisfaction come from adding the highest value, because that's what you are designed to do. Darby, you had a question, and we did not complete that question.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you, by the way? I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah, it's been kind of sad. I've lost three siblings, two brothers and a sister in 6 months. And
Oh,
Sorry to hear that.
they were my friends. I found a little comfort in you talking about this body, and then we continue on. We are who we are. And that was just a little comforting because I love them. I'm understanding that I love them based on the bloodline first, and then just growing up with them. But
all our sorrow comes from loving the human
Mhm.
body, which is not them.
Right, right.
Your human body scientifically every 5 year or 10 year completely changes. All the
Mhm.
molecules which construct this body, you have flushed them,
Mhm.
and the new molecules have taken the place of that body. So when you are in love with this human body, you are not in love with the true brother or true sister, because you are in love with the power which enlivens them.
Mhm.
That was there before they entered that human body, that will be there. So they have never died.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And we'll talk Ratanjit, but my father was a minister and he taught eternal life. And a lot of people didn't understand that. And that's what he was talking about, not in this body, but who you are, that being within. And but that was very, very comforting and strengthening when I heard you say that. Also,
Huh?
when you talked about the
No,
filter,
they're meeting it.
pardon me.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Somebody
That's
is
okay. Go ahead.
Oh, but when you talked about the filter also, that just encouraged me. That was encouraging. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Mhm.
joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We missed you.
I miss being here, and I was just so grateful that I looked at the clock and it was about 3 minutes after 9. I said, "Oh, I can get with Ratanjit." So much has been going on, and then sometimes you just have to, even though it's maybe not the thing that you should do, but you just don't feel like it right now. I just didn't feel like it some days, and then other days I just wasn't available. But this was right on time for me today. It was right on time for me.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us.
It's always in God's time, Darby,
Yeah. Okay.
right?
We see
He
you need some
knows.
gas.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
also found when you were talking about the bloodline, and we have to love them unconditionally. And I kind of chuckled within myself. I said, I guess we have no choice. That's what was given to us. So, because some of them are kind of hard to love, and maybe they find it hard to love us. But yeah, I just appreciate the message and what I can get from, and how it's helping me to grow and even just exist right now, because it's been kind of rough. But
The fundamental of the good management is when you want to improve an employee or a co-worker,
mhm,
always catch them doing the right things.
mhm,
So we have to find something positive in each person, and there are qualities which are positive. Of course, there are some negative qualities in each one of us.
Yeah.
And rather than nurturing those negative quality by noticing them, you nurture the positive quality by noticing the positive
Mhm.
quality in them. So your lawn grows whichever side you water. So if you water the negative side of a human being, that is what is going to grow. So we always, we always tell them, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And that is exactly what they do. Instead of catching them doing the right thing, we catch them doing the wrong thing. So if your brain is focused on noticing the positive thing in every human being, so your life is becoming positive and you will improve your surroundings and your persons. So the same person will act positively with you because you notice positivity in that person, and the same person may be obnoxious and this thing with other party because they notice the negative thing in them.
Darby, you've got brothers and sisters on this show, so come back and be with us every week. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any thoughts today?
Yeah, just an addition to what Ratanjit Singh said, I was about 30 years ago, I had a friend who is in a management consultant. He put the same thing in front of me, that when we appoint anybody in our corporation or as a worker, we always see the plus point of him. And when we appoint him, after that, why we start looking at the negative of it? So why not, when we have appointed him, why not develop the same thing so that he improves for the best of the company? So that is, I don't know why this human nature comes into the picture, but this is
that is the habit. We see when we lose a tooth, you have 31 teeth still alive, good, but your tongue always go to that spot which is missing. So we are designed by nature. This human body has to take care of itself. So it is alert on all negative aspects which can harm it so that it can protect it. So we are basically wired to notice the negative things. So we have to develop a habit of noticing positive things. So that is something which we learn and which we nurture and which we develop. So naturally, we are not going to notice the positive things. We are designed to notice when somebody shows up, your mind instantly makes a decision that person is going to harm you or not harm you. So basically, when you are in the value-adding mode, your mind goes into how do I add value to this person who has come in front of me. So you're part yourself into a much more successful paradigm, which will stay with you all your life. Go ahead, Kim.
I want to say thank you, because what I'm taking out of this conversation today is to just be the rose. And my heart is full, and it's just so beautiful to be the rose, because even though I tried to put out a lot of fires and I thought I was doing it in service of the family, I feel like my love was conditioned upon their cooperation with improving the circumstances. So it's a bit self-righteous, and it's judging, fixing versus just loving them. And loving can bring healing so much faster than, beating. It's almost like victim blaming, like whatever the circumstances are, they are, but it's not going to help by beating them up because of where they are.
Yes.
So whether it's addiction, whether it's poverty, whether it's, a mistake, we could celebrate the mistake, that instead of it being a problem, it's an opportunity, and welcome them, to join me, whether they choose to or not. I think for me, it's like letting go and just accepting what is. And then that gives me access to just be, rather than being angry and forcing outcomes and hating everything, all of the circumstances and the people around me and the people who contributed to all of that. It just keeps me in a negative space and disconnected from everyone that I'm trying to serve. So being the rose gives me oxygen, and it also brings beauty to everyone around me that has an opportunity to encounter me if I have my mind right, knowing that we're all one. So hurting them in any way, berating them in any way, being angry with them in any way, is creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of negativity. It's not going to produce the results that I'm hoping for. So I'm going to be the rose. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. You are a rose.
You are a rose. Yes.
Does everyone give off the fragrance of a rose? I know that it's there. They're capable of being that rose. But, you know, you look at the different fragrances, some are not so pleasant.
Because your mind is set into what you call as pleasant and not pleasant. So mind has already decided. So, you know, I'm a chemist. So one of the most deadly poison is potassium cyanide. So, but that is the most useful chemical in creating intermediate for medicine, life-saving drugs, and it is used to extract gold out of the mine, and it is used in so many places because it is very reactive. So instead of calling it bad, we started using its positive quality. So it is up to us to unveil the positivity in every situation and capitalize on that. If you find that it's atomic power, it can destroy it when you think of negativity, and it can give us power, which is also when you think of positivity. So everything has positive and negative built in that. So same thing with the human being, same thing with us.
Darby, I'm going to answer something with Ratanjit too that he shared with me. We used to talk a lot about if you have a bottle and you put garlic in it, okay, it smells like garlic, and garlic, of course, is not a pleasant odor at all. If you take the garlic out and you put perfume in it, that perfume doesn't smell very sweet. It still smells more like garlic than perfume. And so, you know, to your question about does everybody's fragrance from the rose smell the same? If there's a lot of garlic in there, it can't smell the same. We've got to flush away all that garlic before we can allow the real aroma of the rose to come through. And so that takes a cleansing, it takes a filter. And Ratanjit always talks about that as being the contamination of life. You know, we need to remove and uncontaminate ourselves, and so that you can get that pure rose aroma coming through. And you know, what's so powerful about the rose is that if you just walk into a room, you don't even see the rose, but you can smell that fragrance. That's such an incredibly strong fragrance of the rose. So the goodness of you coming into a room when you've got that pure rose aroma, people just can sense you're in the room. They can just feel differently as soon as they walk in, even though they don't see you. They know you're there from your rose aroma, you know, and that's really the power of becoming the rose, is that you can affect people even if they don't talk to you, don't see you. They just know you're there because of that brilliant aroma that you give off. That's what we want to be, right?
Absolutely. Dr. Mehta, you have any comments? You have been quiet.
I was just thinking that even, you know, when we presume the rose is going to give a fragrance, we presume that it gets water regularly and gets nurtured properly. Because if you don't give water or nurture it properly, it may not even develop that. And what we are talking about today is, even though sometimes we may not get adequate water or nurturing, how to keep on fighting to grow up to give a fragrance that's all about. Ray started by saying, what if all the environment is bad currently, which is same thing with the rose. Environment is not cooperative or not supportive. we're going to have a problem. And we are talking about facing those challenges despite lack of water, despite lack of adequate nutrients from the soil. And that's hard. And that's what we are talking about today.
Right.
I mean, I understand what Kim went through during her childhood, and I feel sad, but she came out, you know, smelling like rose despite all the difficult environment. And this is all about fighting those environmental challenges. Isn't that what we are talking about today?
Yeah. Very good. Overcoming. Yes. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank
you know
you
what
so
next
much.
week is?
Thank you so much.
We'll
It
be
was
more on
wonderful.
this topic.
Maybe this topic can be taken up sometime. I fully agree about nurturing, how the nurturing should be done. Maybe you can consider, Ray, anytime this topic.
Yes. Very good.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Doctor.
I interrupted
Thank you,
you.
Thank
so
you,
much.
everybody.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
such a
Thank you.
pleasure to be with all of you.
You.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good week.